Hi guys, I'm gonna be reacting to a camping, the true camping alone creepy story animated. Let's start.
My name is Yusuf. I'm 21 years old. A few weeks ago, my parents decided to go to Lebanon for a few days while I stayed home. I was happy to have a few days to myself, so I decided to drive to the lake which my family went camping at when I was small. It was remote, surrounded by trees and barely anyone goes there. I decided to stay for one night though. As I got there, I decided to dare myself into skinny dipping since I was alone. To be honest, it was quite refreshing and relaxing. As it was getting dark, I took out some firewood to dry up with a campfire and got my lunch. That night, I dared myself into sleeping naked under my towel as I would never get another chance like this. As I woke up, I was shocked. My towel was gone. I couldn't find my clothes either. I felt scared as this meant I wasn't alone in the woods. To my luck, my car keys weren't stolen, so I decided to get home. However, since I was staying for one night, I didn't bring any extra clothes. Due to my condition, I had to drive on those barely used roads to avoid any exposure to the public. It was a bumpy ride, but it was worth it. After a few hours, I saw a man in the distance near the road. He tripped and hit his head on a rock. Despite my condition, I knew I needed to stop and give him some help. But as I saw him, I realized he was wearing the same clothes I wore yesterday. I got out to ask if he's okay, but he didn't move. As I got closer, he grabbed my hand and looked at me. He had wide eyes and a huge, terrifying smile. I was more scared than I like to admit. I quickly got in my car and drove away. I managed to get home by sunset, and it took me a few minutes to get the balls to run to my front door. I have no return to the lake, and his smile haunted me ever since.
That was creepy. That was really creepy, guys. Uh, let's do another one. Let's try this one.
Comixology is Amazon's premier
Creepy.
digital comics, graphic novels, and manga reading experience. With a
Okay. The shabby apartment.
I am in my mid-40s. This is what happened nearly 20 years ago. One day I visited one of my friends at his apartment, which was very old and shabby. There was an entrance to an elevator in the center of the corridor. I can't remember well, but my friend lived in unit 701 or 801 on the 7th or 8th floor. So looking at the apartment building from outside the main entrance, his house was on the far left end. One summer day, my friend said he was alone and didn't have any plans, so we called two of our friends and had a drinking party. The four of us had been drinking since the early evening, and just before passing out, we all lied on the floor, turned the lights off, and started talking. While talking to each other, a beam of street light entered through the window and was shining on the ceiling. I guess the street lights on the first floor of the apartment complex were on. Of course, we were talking while gazing at the ceiling. All of a sudden, the white ceiling turned black, as if something covered up the light. At that moment, we looked out the window while crouching down. Someone with a creepy vibe was hanging on a steel bar outside the window. Since the light was shining from behind that person, we could not see his face clearly. Then, after making an unidentifiable gesture, he smiled, showing his white teeth without making a sound. We were so shocked at that moment that we stopped talking and were frozen with silence. Suddenly, one of us picked up an empty bottle of wine and ran toward the window shouting, "Kill that bastard!" But the creepy guy had disappeared. After a few minutes, we went out of the apartment to see where he had gone, but we could not find him. We could only hear his stomping footsteps and assumed he entered the corridor and went down the stairs. Going down the stairs is the only way that stomping sound could be made. It sounded like he descended to the first floor and was walking around, so we followed down the stairs looking for him, but quickly returned to the apartment, still filled with fear.
Well, why
At
are you
first,
smiling?
we thought it must have been a robber or some crazy guy laughing in front of the window. But when we came back to our friend's house, we were all shocked. The distance between the end of the corridor and the window of our friend's apartment was too long for someone hanging onto the steel window bar to jump across. Only a crazy person would try and fall to their death. Ordinary people can't even hold on to the steel bar. We thought that maybe someone had committed suicide by jumping from the roof of the apartment and caught the steel bar while falling. So we went down to the first floor to see if a body was there, but there wasn't a single trace. After that experience, I never visited his house again.
Did you and Alex break up?
What? Why?
He just walked into the party I'm at with another girl.
Wow, that story was
I am a
creepy.
19-year-old male, and this happened many years ago when I was very young. To give you an idea of the layout of our house back then, the living room has multiple windows that directly look out onto the back garden. There's a big gate in our driveway to stop anyone from getting in. Next to the living room is the kitchen, which also has more windows, but also the back door. This will be relevant to the story. So my mother was completing the household chores as she does one day. I was sitting in the living room watching television on the sofa with my back to the living room windows. All of a sudden, I saw a figure reflecting off of the picture frame hanging on the wall opposite the window. I asked my mom if my dad was back from work, to which she said no. I'll never ever forget the look of horror on her face when I told her that yes, he was. He's in the garden. She looked outside the window and almost had a heart attack when she saw a scruffy-looking but fairly built man outside the living room window. This didn't seem to faze him at all, though. He psychotically smiled at my mother through the glass, and my mom asked him what he was doing on our property. He said nothing, with the same sadistic smirk on his face. She said that she was going to call the police, and what he said is one of the scariest things I've ever heard. He screamed at my mother through the glass that if she even got her phone out, that he would break the glass. She did not know what to do. She paused and tried to rapidly think of what to do next, how to keep us both safe. She wanted to protect me by calling the police, but she also didn't want him to hurt me if she did try to call them. As soon as he saw that she was terrified, he ran for the back door. Luckily, it was locked because my mom has always been a paranoid person, so she always locks the doors. He screamed at her to let him in, or if she didn't, he'd find a way in and kill us both. My mother told him to fuck off, which enraged him, and he pulled out a pocket knife and began bashing hard against the windows. I was still oblivious to what was happening, as I just thought I was my dad. I was very young. My mom frantically grabbed me, and I don't mean picked me up. She literally grabbed me off the sofa and booked it up the stairs. We were backing up in the upstairs hallway, looking for anywhere to hide, when my mom's younger brother popped out of his room with his headphones on. My mom didn't even realize he was home, and he clearly didn't hear the commotion downstairs because of his headphones. My uncle was 25 at the time and was really well built. He's intimidated a lot of people. My mom cried and told him that there's a guy who's trying to break in. While she's telling him this, that creepy lunatic screamed from downstairs that he was in the house. He said cynically, "Boogeyman is coming out to get you," which really freaked me out. It freaked me out so much that I actually remember that to this day. Anyway, since the guy didn't know my uncle was home, he kept yelling and telling us to come out and that it wouldn't be painful. My uncle told us to lock ourselves in the bathroom and call the police. We did, and after 5 minutes of groaning and blatant violence downstairs, the police stormed in and found the guy bloodied and my uncle on top of him, beating him mercilessly. My uncle really didn't hold back. Turns out that he was a known pedophile, which is why he was watching me for so long while I was watching TV. After that day, my mom was terrified to be home alone at the house. I loved it as a child because I found the running and hiding fun, obviously because I was young. I can never thank my uncle enough for being there at the right
That's
time.
creepy,
When my mother
guys.
clearly forgot that he was still home. It honestly gives me chills, wondering what he would have done to my mother and myself if my uncle was not there.
That is exactly why I hate windows. I always lock my door. That's a good thing. Yo, guys, I have to tell you something. This guy was coming in my hallway with a gun. Like a fake gun. I don't know.
I need to post it. Wait. I'm trying to
I don't know if it's a fake gun or real, but it was ticking. So my mom said it was real, and she
I work at a pizza
ran
joint
to the
in
doors,
Chicago,
locked
and
them.
I unfortunately have the shitty responsibility of delivering pizzas, usually on the weekends.
Stop cursing.
And usually
Watch your
at
mouth.
night.
Watch your shut.
I've asked my boss for day shifts, but she seems to ignore my requests and give me whatever shifts I don't want the most. I know being a pizza delivery man is somewhat of a dangerous job, but I never imagined anything like what happened to me a few months ago could actually happen. There is this one customer that always calls in and acts strange as hell on the phone. Sometimes he will just hang up on you. Sometimes he'll order pizzas normally, but make crazy sounds while he does, and then hang up. We've always thought this guy was just an idiot playing pranks. He would make really weird comments too, like, "I want to order a large pizza with pineapples, mustard, and your skin." I'll never forget that one. We usually just hang up on his ass now, and we always know it's him calling because his number is saved in our system. So he called again a few months ago and ordered a pizza normally. No bullshit, no weird comments or sounds, and gave his address too. I thought it would be interesting to finally deliver to this guy, and when I drove up to his house, it was something you'd see in a scary movie. An old as hell looking place right on the line where we don't deliver, not in the busy part of the city where most of our orders come in. The house looked like it was about 100 years
right
old,
now.
and there were no lights on that I could see. I wasn't scared or anything, just looking forward to seeing what he looked like. When I went to the front door, I rang the bell, but it wasn't working, so I knocked. I realized I forgot the guy's soda and thought he'd give me shit for sure, or just freak out on me. Nobody answered right away, so I knocked again on this big door. He opened up after that second time. He was wearing this weird-looking mask around his mouth, only his mouth. His eyes were opened wide, and I told him how much the pizza was, and that I was sorry I forgot the drink. He looked down, I think, and then said, "It's okay," and then looked at me again. I stood there looking at him for like 5 seconds in silence when I got bored of his shit and told him the amount again. He said okay, and then asked me, "Has anyone ever attacked me before?" I told him no, and if they did, they'd be sorry. He then took off his mask that was covering his mouth, and he had big-ass scars all around his mouth. I have no idea what they were from, and can't even imagine what they might have been from, but he looked seriously messed up. He smiled at me and his lips were all cracked. I noticed he wasn't about to hand me some money, so I told him I was leaving. I turned around and started walking down the steps, and he screamed at me and slammed the door. This bastard was crazy, and I don't think any of his shit was to be funny. That final scream he gave me was creepy as hell, even though I kind of expected him to do something like that. He has called several times since then, and we always just tell him now that he is on our no delivery list. He usually just screams and hangs up, or cusses out whoever is on the phone.
Oh my god.
I was on summer break and went camping with my friend and his parents. We went to the lake during the day and did the s'mores thing at night. His parents shared a tent while my friend and I had our own. I can't remember where the campsite was, and I'm not really in contact with my friend anymore. But 15 years later, I'm assuming it wasn't the safest place to camp. Here's why. I woke up sometime in the early morning, like 3 or 4 a.m., and immediately saw a man's face looking in the tent at us. He had unzipped the door just enough to stick his head inside.
Oh my
He
god,
looked
no.
absolutely insane. He had big eyes and wild hair. I was so stiff from fear,
Get
I
up!
literally couldn't do anything. The man kept moving his head from left to right, very, very slowly, as if it was uncontrollable. I guess my friend could hear me breathing loudly or something, because he woke up too. He had the same reaction as me, and just laid there in terror, looking at this mysterious man. I'm not certain how long he was sitting there looking at us, but it felt like hours, shaking his head back and forth. At some point, we heard a noise close by, and so did the man. He disappeared quick, and a couple minutes later we got out of our tent and woke up his parents. The guy was long gone. I'm still afraid of camping to this day.
Hold on. Every thing I watch of when people are camping, something bad happens. I'm never camping. You guys shouldn't camp either. Another thing, I don't want to camp because nature. Another thing is, people are out there. People that are weird, disgusting, probably even like serial killers. So I'm never going camping. That's my opinion.
A few years ago, I was driving from Texas to Louisiana to help my dad move when I stopped at this tiny, crappy motel right off the highway. It was very late at night, and it was the only option I could see. I don't remember the person who checked me in at all. I was so drowsy I could barely keep my eyes open. All I remember is sitting on the bed, kicking off my boots, and noticing that my room was connected to another room. I saw that the lock on that door was turned to the right, which looked like the locked position to me, and I fell backwards and passed out on the bed.
No.
At some point, I turned my body and laid on the bed fully. I don't remember when or how long I had been sleeping. Then, I was awoken in the most terrifying way imaginable. A sharp object was stabbed into my back. I screamed and rolled off the bed. I looked and just barely caught a glimpse of what looked like a very skinny man with long, greasy hair run through the door that connected our rooms. I was taken to the hospital after I ran into the parking lot screaming, and the paramedic removed a letter opener from my back. I never returned to the motel, and I have no idea what happened or who it was.
Oh my god. Wow. I was just thinking about going to a hotel too. I'm going on Friday actually. Next Friday. But yeah, this is just creepy.
When I was a little girl, my parents took me to visit my...
Hold up.
Oh, snake.
Is that a boy or a girl? Because listen to his voice. And it's a girl.
She lived in a little village in the countryside. Her cottage was very small and there was only one bedroom. My grandmother slept in one bed. My parents slept in the other, and I had to sleep on some cushions on the floor. We stayed there for a few weeks, and I was troubled by terrible nightmares. Every night, I would wake up screaming. My parents tried to calm me down and asked me what was wrong. All I could tell them was that there was a man coming to get me. I can still remember the cause of my terror. Every night, I saw a shadowy figure emerge from behind the curtains in the corner of the room. He was a pitch black man. All I could make out was his silhouette. He was tall and he was hairy. I would watch in horror as he came crawling towards me with a sickening slowness. He came up to me and he whispered something in my ear. And just as I was about to scream, he would place a finger against his lips and whisper, "Shush, shush, shush." He tortured me